The sharp bite of gasoline hit Leora's nose first. It crawled under the mahogany door like something alive, cutting through the warm smell of frying eggplant and simmering San Marzano tomatoes. She kept stirring. Outside, 5 black SUVs screamed to a stop in the narrow cobblestone alley of Brera, Milan. Doors slammed in perfect rhythm, one after another, like a countdown. Leora's eyes stayed on the copper pot. She knew that sound. It was the sound of a bill coming due. 10 days ago, a man in a black suit had walked into Leora's table. He'd placed a velvet envelope on the counter between them. His voice was smooth. Valen Moretti requests your compliance with the District Protection Program. €5,000 monthly. First payment due in 7 days. Liora had smiled politely. Then she'd walked to the pizza oven and tossed the envelope into the flames. 5 days later, another envelope arrived. Hand-delivered by a different man. This one didn't smile. Mr. Moretti doesn't appreciate being ignored. The fee is now 10,000. You have 48 hours. Liora used the envelope to scrape scales off a sea base. She knew what came next. In the Mafia world, the third contact isn't a messenger. It's an ending. But what Liora didn't know was that Valen Moretti hadn't sent those envelopes for money. He'd sent them as bait, a test. For 3 years, he'd been tracking every new restaurant opening in Milan, searching for a ghost, a signature, a specific way of preparing Sicilian food that only one woman in the world had ever taught. His mother, and she'd only taught one person outside the family, her cook, a man named Silas. Silas, who had vanished the night she was killed. Valen wasn't coming to collect a debt. He was coming to see if the ghost had finally made a mistake. The front window exploded inward. Glass rained down like broken stars, sharp and glittering. Then came the boots. They hit her hand-polished floors with the kind of weight that left marks. Liora Sabini! The voice that followed was a roar. It wasn't Valen. It was Marco, his second-in-command. A man who built his reputation on loving the smell of things burning. You spit on the Moretti name. Now you burn with your kitchen. She heard the slosh of liquid. They were pouring gasoline near the doorway, on the old hostess stand, near the curtains her mother had sewn. Not everywhere, just enough to send a message, enough to create fear. Leora's heart hammered against her ribs, but her hand stayed steady. She reached for the ricotta salata, the firm, salted sheep's milk cheese, the soul of her pasta alla Norma. Stop! The single word cut through the chaos like a knife. The restaurant went silent. Even the splashing stopped. Liora turned slowly. Standing in the shattered doorway was Valen Moretti. He was taller than the stories made him out to be. His coat fell in clean, expensive lines, swallowing the small, worn edges of her restaurant without trying. His hair was dark. His eyes were the color of a winter sea, cold, gray, and impossibly deep. Marco stood behind him, a silver Zippo already flicked open in his palm, waiting for the order. Liora Sabini, Valen said. His voice was low, a vibration that moved through the air. You've insulted me twice. I don't offer third chances. But before Marco lights the match, I want to see what's worth dying for. He walked past the gasoline-soaked wood without flinching, stepped over the broken glass. His expensive shoes crunched on the shards as he moved toward the kitchen. His eyes swept across the prep station, the fresh basil, the handwritten recipe cards pinned to a corkboard, the copper pots hanging in a specific order. Then he stopped. His nostrils flared. The smell hit him like a fist to the chest. Fried eggplant, tomatoes with basil, and something else. Something specific. A tang. A sharpness. Smoked salt. Liora watched his throat work as he swallowed. She watched the way his jaw tightened, the way his fingers curled into fists at his sides. Who taught you to smoke the ricotta? Valen asked. His voice was dangerously quiet now. My father, Liora said. Her voice was steady despite the adrenaline flooding her veins. He worked in Sicilian kitchens before I was born. He said smoke keeps the bitterness away. Valen's eyes snapped to hers. What was his name? Does it matter? Liora picked up a wooden spoon and stirred the sauce. You're here to burn my restaurant, not interview my family tree. Welcome to Honeybee Mafia Tales, where obsessed Italian bosses meet the women who won't kneel. If you love dark romance and danger, subscribe now. Let's continue. Valen took 3 steps forward. Fast. He grabbed her wrist, not roughly, but absolute. He pulled her hand up between them and looked at the calluses on her palms. Old ones. The kind that take years to build. You learned to cook young, he said. It wasn't a question. I learned to survive young, Liora corrected. She tried to pull away. He didn't let go. Valen released her suddenly. He turned to Marco. Get out. Marco blinked. Boss? I said get out. Take the men. Wait in the vehicles. But the gasoline. Leave it. Valen's voice dropped to a lethal whisper. If I smell a match strike in the next 10 minutes, I'll make you drink what's left in those jugs. Do you understand me? Marco's face went pale. Yes, boss. The men scrambled out like frightened children. The door slammed behind them. The restaurant fell into a thick, suffocating silence. Liora and Valen stood alone in the kitchen. The only sound was the bubbling of the sauce on the stove. Valen walked to the pot. He picked up a clean spoon from the counter, dipped it into the thick auburn sauce, brought it to his lips. Liora watched his eyes close, watched the way his shoulders dropped. Just a fraction. Like a man who'd been holding his breath for years and finally remembered how to exhale. This is her recipe, Valen whispered. My mother's. Exactly. The temperature of the oil, the timing on the eggplant, the smoked salt from cherry wood. He opened his eyes and looked at Liora. Where did you get this? I told you, my father. Your father's name, Valen interrupted. His voice was hard now, a blade. Tell me his name. Leora's pulse jumped. She could lie. She should lie. But something in Valen's eyes told her he already knew. That this whole night, the summons, the gasoline, the fear, was just a test. A way to confirm what he'd suspected for months. Silas, she said quietly. His name was Silas Sabini. Valen set the spoon down with a heavy clink. He braced both hands on the edge of the prep table. The metal groaned under the pressure. When he looked up, his expression was unreadable. Silas was my mother's cook, Valen said. He worked in our villa for 7 years. He was there the night she died. And when we found her body in the dining room the next morning, Silas was gone, disappeared, along with a leather ledger that contained every dirty secret the Moretti family had buried for 2 decades. Leora's stomach dropped. My father wasn't a thief. I don't care what he was. Valen cut her off. I care what he left behind. Because if you learn to cook from him, then you have access to something I've been hunting for 10 years. Recipes. He stepped closer. Close enough that she could smell the cold winter air clinging to his coat. Close enough to see the exhaustion carved into the lines around his eyes. You're not going to burn, Valen said quietly. But you're not free either. This restaurant is mine now. You cook, I eat. And while you cook, you're going to tell me everything Silas taught you. Every dish, every method, every goddamn pinch of salt. Because somewhere in those recipes is the answer to who killed my mother. Leora's hands were shaking now. And if I refuse? Valen reached into his coat. For a terrible moment, she thought he was pulling a gun. But instead, he pulled out a faded small photograph. He placed it on the counter between them. It was a woman, dark hair, kind eyes, standing in a kitchen with a young boy beside her. The boy was smiling. That's the last picture I have of her, Valen said. His voice cracked. Just once. She died 3 days later, poisoned, in her own dining room, by someone she trusted, someone who knew exactly what she would eat, how she liked it prepared, and Silas was the only one who knew those details. Liora looked at the photograph, at the boy who would grow up to be the wolf, and at the woman whose recipes now lived in her hands. "My father didn't kill her," Liora said. Her voice was firm. "I don't know why he ran, but he didn't kill her." "Then prove it," Valen said. He picked up the photograph and tucked it back into his coat. "Cook for me, every night, every dish he taught you. And if you're right, if Silas was innocent, then somewhere in that food is the evidence that will lead me to the real killer." He turned toward the door, stopped, looked back over his shoulder. "My men will be outside, front and back. You don't leave. You don't call anyone. You cook." "And Liora?" His gray eyes locked onto hers. "If I even suspect you're trying to poison me, I won't burn the restaurant. I'll find everyone you've ever cared about and make you watch while I erase them, one by one. Do we understand each other?" Liora nodded. She didn't trust her voice. Valen walked out into the night. The door closed behind him with a soft click. Liora stood alone in her kitchen. The kitchen that was no longer hers, surrounded by the faint smell of gasoline and the ghost of a dead woman's recipes. She looked down at the pot of pasta alla Norma. Her father had taught her to cook this dish when she was 8 years old. He'd told her the smoked salt was the key, that it kept the ghosts away. But he'd lied. The ghosts had just arrived, and they wore expensive coats and had eyes like winter seas. For the first 3 nights after Valen claimed the restaurant, he didn't ask a single question. He sat at the scarred wooden prep table in the back of the kitchen, a glass of dark Nebbiolo wine in his hand. He watched Liora work. The restaurant was a fortress now. Marco and 2 other men stood at the front doors like statues. Their shadows stretched long across the dining room floor. The neon open sign remained dark. It hadn't been lit since Valen first walked through those doors. Liora felt his gaze like a physical weight pressing down on her spine. She tried to ignore it. She focused on the saltimbocca alla romana, veal wrapped in prosciutto and sage. The butter sizzled in the pan. It was the only sound breaking the suffocating silence that filled the kitchen like smoke. On the 4th night, Valen finally spoke. "Why this restaurant?" he asked. His voice was sandpaper on silk, rough but smooth at the same time. "So there are 100 kitchens in Milan with better equipment, better locations, better everything. Why this dusty corner in Brera?" Liora didn't look up from her sauté pan. She couldn't. "My father used to talk about it, when I was young, before he got sick. He'd say, 'Liora, there's a building on Via Fioriciari with floors that remember every meal ever cooked on them. If you ever want to start over, start there.'" She flipped the veal. The prosciutto was crisping perfectly. "I thought he was being nostalgic, but when I had saved enough to lease a space, I came here. The previous owner had died. The real estate agent said it had been sitting empty for 3 years. The rent was dirt cheap, so I signed the lease." She finally looked up at Valen. "I didn't know he'd worked here. Not until I found the initials." Valen set his wineglass down slowly. "What initials?" Liora wiped her hands on her apron, walked to the walk-in cooler, opened the heavy steel door, and pointed to the inside of the frame. Carved into the metal, small and precise, were the letters SS, 1989. "Silas Sabini," Liora said quietly. "When I saw that, I realized he hadn't just talked about this place. He'd worked here, for someone, before I was born." Valen stood up, walked to the cooler, ran his fingers over the carved letters. His expression didn't change, but his breathing did. It got slower. "He worked here," Valen said, "for my father. This building was a Moretti supply kitchen in the 80s, before it was sold off." He turned to look at her. "Your father didn't send you here for nostalgia, Liora. He sent you here because he hid something, and he knew you'd find it eventually." "I've scrubbed every inch of this place. If he hid something, I would have found it." Valen reached into his coat, pulled out a small brass key. Leora's breath caught. She recognized it instantly. "Where did you get that?" she whispered. "From your apron," Valen said. "2 nights ago, while you were plating the veal, you didn't notice." He held it up to the light. This is a Savona key, vintage, 1970s. They were used for floor safes in commercial buildings. My father had 3 of them installed across Milan. Leora's blood went cold. I've had that key since I was 16. My father hid it in the lining of my coat before he died. I tried it on every lock I could find for years. It didn't fit anything. Because you were looking in the wrong places, Valen said. He pocketed the key. Savona safes weren't installed in walls or floors like normal safes. They were built into structural foundations, places you'd never think to check because removing them would compromise the building. He looked around the kitchen. His eyes searched the room. Then they landed on the industrial pizza oven in the corner. When did you restore that? Valen asked. 2 months ago, Liora said. It was broken when I bought it. I had to hire a contractor to rebuild the firebox and replace the bricks. Did they remove the entire structure? No. They said the foundation was still solid. They only replaced the upper chamber. Valen walked to the oven, slowly, like he was approaching something dangerous. He crouched down, ran his hands along the base, the ancient brickwork that hadn't been touched in decades. Your father was a cook, Valen said, but before that, he was a mason's apprentice. Did you know that? Liora blinked. No. My father hired him because he could do both, build the kitchens and work in them. Silas helped install half the equipment in this building back in 1989. Valen pressed his palm against the bricks. If he wanted to hide something, he wouldn't put it in a wall safe. He'd build it into something no one would ever tear down, something sacred. The oven, Liora whispered. Valen nodded. He started feeling along the base. His fingers searched for seams, gaps, anything that didn't belong. Nothing. He sat back on his heels, frustrated. Then he looked up. At Liora. You've used this oven for 2 months, every day. So you know it better than anyone. His gray eyes locked onto hers. Has anything ever felt wrong? Off balance? A draft where there shouldn't be one? A hot spot that doesn't make sense? Liora thought back. She'd cooked hundreds of pizzas in that oven. She knew every quirk, every temperature variance, every... The left side, she said suddenly. The left side always runs 5 degrees hotter than the right. I thought it was just the airflow, but the contractor said the firebox was centered. It shouldn't do that. Valen's eyes narrowed. Show me. Liora walked to the oven, opened the heavy iron door, pointed to the left interior wall. The heat concentrates here, right against this section of brick. I always have to rotate my pizzas, or they burn on one side. Valen leaned in, looked at the bricks she was pointing to. Then he reached up, pressed his hand flat against the interior wall. It's warm, he said, but not from the fire. The oven's been off for an hour. He pressed harder. There's a cavity behind this, an air pocket. He pulled off his coat, rolled up his sleeves. Then he started tapping on the bricks, listening. The sound changed on the 3rd brick from the bottom, hollow. Valen grabbed a butter knife from the prep station, started working it into the mortar seam. The old grout crumbled easily. Within 2 minutes, he'd loosened the brick enough to pull it free. Behind it was darkness. He reached into the cavity. His arm disappeared up to the elbow. Then he froze. I've got something. He pulled out a small metal box. It was warm to the touch, heated by decades of residual warmth from the oven's flames. Valen set it on the prep table, looked at Liora. The key, he said. Leora's hands were shaking as she took the brass key from him. She slid it into the lock on the box. It fit perfectly. She turned it. The lock clicked open. Inside was a leather-bound journal. The edges were singed from years of living next to an active firebox, but it had survived. Valen pulled it out with shaking hands. He opened it to the first page. His face went pale. Liora leaned over his shoulder. She could see handwriting, her father's handwriting, but it wasn't recipes. Not the way she expected. It was a list of names, dates, locations, and next to each name was a dish. Antonio Ricci, November 12th, 1996. Osso buco with saffron risotto. Allergic to shellfish, severe. Giovanni Lanza, March 3, 1998. Bistecca fiorentina, rare, diabetic, insulin-dependent. Salvatore Conte, July 19, 2001. Branzino al forno with fennel. Takes blood thinners, warfarin. The list went on, page after page, dozens of names, all of them men from powerful mafia families, all of them with their favorite dishes, and all of them with a medical note, a weakness, a vulnerability. This isn't a recipe book, Valen breathed. It's a kill list. Leora's stomach turned. My father wouldn't. Your father was a genius, Valen interrupted. He flipped through more pages. He didn't need blackmail or evidence. He had something better. He had access. Every boss in Milan ate at private tables. They had personal chefs, private kitchens, and Silas networked with all of them. He traded techniques, shared suppliers, built trust. Valen stopped on a page near the middle. His hand trembled. Alessandra Moretti, August 14th. 2003. Pasta alla Norma, no known allergies. Trusted the staff completely. Below that, in smaller writing, poison delivered via balsamic reduction. Administered by D. Conti, server. Paid by A. Ricci. Estimated time of death, 11:47 p.m. The air in the kitchen went cold. Valen's breathing was shallow. His knuckles were white around the edges of the journal. He knew, Valen whispered. Silas knew who killed her. He watched it happen. He documented it. And then he ran. He didn't run because he was guilty, Liora said. Her voice was shaking now. He ran because he had proof. And if the Riccis knew he had proof, they would have killed him. They would have killed me. Valen snapped the journal shut. He stood up abruptly. For a moment, Liora thought he might hit her, might grab her and demand answers she didn't have. But instead, he walked to the sink, braced both hands on the edge. His head hung low. All this time, he said. His voice was raw. I thought Silas poisoned her, but he was a witness. He was trying to protect the evidence. Where is D. Conti now? Liora asked. The server. Is he still alive? Valen shook his head. Dante Conti died in a car accident 6 months after my mother's funeral. The Riccis tied up their loose end. And Antonio Ricci? Still running half of Milan's underground. Valen turned to look at her. His eyes were red-rimmed. This journal is a death sentence, Liora. For him. For me. For you. If the Riccis find out you have this... The front window exploded. Glass shattered inward in a spray of glittering shards. A brick tumbled across the dining room floor. Wrapped around it was a piece of paper. Marco burst into the kitchen, his hand already on his holster. His face was pale. Boss, they're watching the building. Valen didn't flinch. He walked calmly into the dining room, picked up the brick, unwrapped the note, read it once, then crumpled it in his fist. What does it say? Liora asked from the kitchen doorway. Valen's jaw tightened. It says, we know about the girl, we know about the kitchen. If you want war, Wolf, we'll start with the things you protect. He turned to Marco. How many men do we have on the perimeter? 4, plus the 2 at the back door. Not enough. Valen pulled out his phone, started typing rapidly. Call in the Southside crews. I want 20 men on this block within the hour. No one gets within 50 meters of this building. And Marco... Yes, boss? Find out who's been watching us. I want names. I want addresses. I want to know what they had for breakfast this morning. Marco nodded and disappeared into the night. Valen walked back to Liora. He held up the journal. The Riccis don't know what's in here yet, but they know something exists. They've been watching this building for weeks, waiting to see if Silas left anything behind. And now they've seen me, coming here, night after night. They think you're leverage, a weakness they can exploit. So what do we do? Liora asked. Valen stepped closer, close enough to smell the expensive tobacco clinging to his coat and the faint scent of rain. We finish what your father started. But not here. This place is compromised. We're moving you tonight. Moving me where? Somewhere the Ricci's can't reach. He reached out. His gloved thumb brushed a stray grain of flour off her cheek. You're not a chef anymore, Liora. You're a witness, and I'm going to keep you alive long enough to use this. Use it how? Leora's eyes went wide. I'm calling a summit, Valen said. His voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Every family in Milan. And you're going to stand in front of the 5 bosses and show them exactly what your father documented. Every name, every secret, every weakness. Leora's blood ran cold. They'll kill me before I finish the first page. Not if I'm standing next to you. Valen leaned in closer. His mouth was near her ear. His breath was hot against her skin. Your father kept you alive by hiding you. But hiding is over. The only way you survive now is if you become too dangerous to kill. And the only way you become dangerous is if everyone knows what you know. He pulled back, looked into her eyes. Pack a bag, Liora. We leave in 10 minutes, and don't try to run. Because if you disappear, the Ricci's will assume you took the journal with you, and they'll burn this entire city to find you. Then he was gone. State disappeared into the dining room to coordinate with his men, leaving Liora standing alone in a kitchen that was no longer hers, holding a secret that was no longer hidden. She looked at the exposed brick cavity in the oven, the hiding place her father had built with his own hands 30 years ago. He'd sent her here knowing she'd find it eventually, knowing that the thing she loved most, cooking, would lead her straight to the truth. He'd been right. And now that truth was going to get her killed. The safe house wasn't a house at all. It was a wine cellar beneath a centuries-old monastery on the northern edge of Milan. The stone walls were 3 feet thick. The air smelled of oak barrels and fermented grapes. There was a single entrance, a reinforced steel door at the top of a narrow staircase, and Valen's men guarded it in shifts of 6. Liora had been here for 4 days. 4 days of sleeping on a cot in a storage room, and Valen sitting across from her at a scarred wooden table, flipping through her father's journal page by page, making notes, cross-referencing names with files his men brought down from the surface. On the 5th day, he finally spoke. Your father didn't just document my mother's murder, Valen said. He pushed the journal across the table toward her. He documented 17 other assassinations, all of them carried out through food, all of them ordered by the Ricci family or their allies. Liora looked down at the open page. Her father's handwriting was meticulous. Each entry read like a medical report. Target, Luca Ferraro. Date, June 4th, 1999. Method, arsenic in the espresso. Dosage, 200 milligrams. Administered by M. Rossi, barista. Paid by Ricci. This isn't just evidence, Valen continued. It's a blueprint. Your father was tracking a network, chefs, servers, baristas, all of them on the Ricci payroll and positioned in private kitchens across Milan. Why didn't he go to the police? Liora asked. Her voice was quiet, strained. Valen laughed. It was a bitter sound. Because half the police were eating at those same tables. Your father was smart enough to know that evidence means nothing if the people who enforce the law are the ones breaking it. He stood up, walked to the far end of the cellar, where dozens of wine bottles were racked horizontally in the stone. He pulled one out, blew the dust off the label. A 1982 Barolo. My father drank this the night before he died, Valen said. He set the bottle on the table. Heart attack. That's what the coroner said. But he was 54. Healthy. Never smoked. He looked at the journal. Leora's blood ran cold. You think the Ricci's killed your father too? I think they've been killing Moretti's for 20 years. One by one, slowly, carefully, making it look natural. Valen sat back down. His gray eyes were hard. And I think your father knew. I think he documented it all. And I think he hid this journal because he was waiting for someone to be brave enough to use it. Use it how? Liora asked. Even if you expose this, The Ricci's will just deny it. They'll say it's fabricated. They'll— They can't deny what their own men confess, Valen interrupted. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his coat pocket, slid it across the table. This is a list of every person named in that journal who's still alive. 12 people. All of them still on the Ricci payroll. Liora looked at the list. Her stomach dropped when she saw the third name. Paolo Genovese. Head chef. Ristorante Il Gallo Nero. I know Paolo, she whispered. He taught a seminar I attended 3 years ago. He's one of the most respected chefs in the city. He's also a murderer, Valen said flatly. According to your father's notes, Paolo administered the poison that killed Giovanni Lanza in 1998. Shellfish paste mixed into a beef dish. Lanza went into anaphylactic shock at the table. Everyone thought it was an accident. Liora pushed the list away. What do you want me to do, Valen? Walk into Il Gallo Nero and accuse him? He'll have me thrown out, or worse. I don't want you to accuse him, Valen said. He leaned forward. I want you to cook with him. Liora blinked. What? Il Gallo Nero is hosting a private event in 3 days. A charity gala. 200 guests. Half of them are from the 5 families, including Antonio Ricci. Valen's voice was calm. Too calm. I've arranged for you to work the event as a guest chef. You'll be in the kitchen, right next to Paolo, and you're going to make him confess. That's insane, Liora said. He's not just going to admit to murder because I ask nicely. No, Valen agreed. But he'll talk if he thinks you're one of Silas's other students, if he thinks you're part of the network. Liora shook her head. I'm not a spy, Valen. I'm a cook. I don't know how to— You know how to lie, Valen cut her off. You've been lying for years, pretending you're just a girl who loves food. You're a better actress than you think. He reached across the table, took her hand. His grip was firm, but not forceful. Your father spent 20 years building this case, Valen said quietly. He died protecting it. And now it's in your hands. You can let it disappear. Let the Ricci's keep poisoning people. Keep killing families like mine. Or you can finish what he started. Liora looked down at their joined hands, at the calluses on her palms, the scars from years of hot oil and sharp knives. If I do this, she said, if I go into that kitchen and Paolo realizes what I'm doing, he'll kill me. He'll try, Valen said, but I'll have 15 men in that dining room, and I'll be right outside the kitchen door. If anything goes wrong, I'll pull you out. And if it goes right? Liora asked. If Paolo confesses, what then? Valen's smile was cold, sharp as a blade. Then I call the summit. And every family in Milan hears exactly what the Ricci's have been doing. And Antonio Ricci dies, not by poison, not by accident, but by vote. The families will vote him out, strip his power, and then I'll finish it myself. 3 days later, Liora stood in the gleaming kitchen of Ristorante Il Gallo Nero. The space was enormous. Stainless steel counters stretched 30 feet in every direction. 6 industrial stoves lined the back wall. A team of 20 chefs moved in perfect synchronization. Chopping, stirring, plating. Paolo Genovese stood at the center of it all like a conductor leading an orchestra. He was in his 60s, silver hair, crisp white chef's coat. His hands moved with the precision of a surgeon as he adjusted a plate of seared duck breast. When he looked up and saw Liora, he smiled. Ah, and you must be the guest chef Signore Moretti requested. He wiped his hands on a towel and walked over. Extended his hand. Paolo Genovese, welcome to my kitchen. Liora shook his hand. It was warm. The hand of a man who'd spent 50 years working with fire and steel. Liora Sabini, she said. She forced herself to smile. Thank you for having me. Sabini, Paolo repeated. His eyes narrowed slightly. That name sounds familiar. Have we met before? I attended your seminar on Piedmontese cuisine 3 years ago, Liora said. You probably don't remember. There were over 100 people there. No, Paolo said. He was still studying her face. It's not that. The name itself. Sabini. I knew a Sabini once, long time ago. He was a cook, worked in the old Moretti supply kitchen. Leora's heart jumped, but she kept her expression neutral. My father was a cook. Maybe you worked together. Maybe, Paolo said, but his eyes didn't leave hers. What was his name? Silas. The name hung in the air between them. For a moment, Paolo's face went completely blank. Then he smiled again. But it wasn't the same smile as before. This one didn't reach his eyes. Silas Sabini, Paolo said softly. Yes. I remember him. Brilliant cook. Terrible tragedy. What happened to him? What happened to him? Liora asked. She kept her voice steady. Curious, but not accusatory. He disappeared, Paolo said. Back in 2003. Just vanished one night. Some people said he ran off with another woman. Others said he'd stolen from the Morettis and fled the city. He turned back to the stove. Either way, he left a lot of people wondering. Liora stepped closer. She picked up a knife from the prep station, started trimming a pile of green beans with practiced efficiency. My father didn't steal anything, she said quietly. He was protecting something. Paolo's hands paused, just for a second. Then he continued plating the duck. Protecting what? The truth. Paolo set down his tweezers. Slowly. He turned to face her fully. The kitchen noise continued around them. The sizzle of pans, the shouted orders, the clang of metal. But between Liora and Paolo, there was only silence. The truth is a dangerous thing in this city, Signorina, Paolo said. His voice had changed. It was colder now, sharper. Your father learned that the hard way. Did you know what he was documenting? Liora asked. She kept slicing the beans, kept her hands busy. Did you know he was keeping records? Paolo picked up a sauté pan, poured olive oil into it. He set it on the flame. Everyone knew Silas kept notes. He was meticulous, obsessive. But most of us thought it was just recipes, techniques, the kind of thing any serious cook would keep. It wasn't recipes, Liora said. The oil in Paolo's pan started to smoke. He didn't seem to notice. He was staring at Liora now, really staring. What are you doing here, Signorina? He asked. His voice was barely above a whisper. I'm cooking, Liora said. She met his eyes. Same as you. No, Paolo said. He turned off the flame, set the pan aside. You're not here to cook. You're here because Valen Moretti sent you. He's trying to find out if the old network still exists. Does it? Liora asked. Paolo's laugh was short, humorless. You're Silas's daughter. You know it does. The question is, are you part of it? Or are you trying to destroy it? Liora set down her knife, wiped her hands on her apron. I'm trying to understand why my father spent 20 years documenting murders and then ran away instead of stopping them. Because stopping them would have gotten him killed, Paolo said. He stepped closer. His voice dropped even lower. Your father wasn't a hero, Liora. He was a survivor. He watched men die. He wrote down what he saw. And then he kept his mouth shut, because that's how you stay alive in this business. He didn't keep his mouth shut, Liora countered. He left evidence. He hid it. He made sure someone would find it. He hid it so well that it took you 3 years, Paolo said. That's not leaving evidence. That's burying it. Or maybe, Liora said, he was waiting for the right person to find it. Someone who would actually use it. Paolo's expression hardened. And you think you're that person? You think Valen Moretti is going to use your father's journal to bring down the Riccis? He shook his head. You're naive, girl. Valen doesn't want justice. He wants revenge. And he's using you to get it. Maybe I want revenge too, Liora said. Paolo studied her for a long moment. Then he picked up his sauté pan again, poured fresh oil. You want to know what I did? He asked. You want me to confess? Liora didn't answer. I poisoned Giovanni Lanza, Paolo said. His voice was matter-of-fact, clinical. Mixed shellfish paste into a bolognese sauce. He died choking, gasping for air. It took 4 minutes. He turned on the flame. I was paid 50,000 euros. I used it to open my first restaurant. Leora's blood ran cold. Why are you telling me this? Because it doesn't matter, Paolo said. He looked at her. His eyes were empty. Your father documented 17 murders. I was involved in 4 of them. And in 20 years, no one has touched me. No one has arrested me. No one has even questioned me. You know why? Because the system is corrupt, Liora said. Because the system is the customer, Paolo corrected. The judges eat here. The prosecutors eat here. The politicians eat here. They all know what I am, and they don't care. Because I make the best duck in Milan. And that's worth more than justice. He picked up a plate, started arranging the duck breast with precision. You can go back to Valen and tell him I confessed. You can play his little game. But it won't change anything. The Ricci's will still be powerful. The network will still exist. She and men like me will still be cooking. Leora's hands were shaking now. She clenched them into fists to stop the trembling. My father believed it mattered. He believed the truth mattered. Your father was a fool, Paolo said. And he died alone. Broken. With nothing to show for his 20 years of documentation, except a daughter who works in a restaurant that doesn't even belong to her anymore. He finished plating the duck, rang the bell for service. A server appeared and whisked the plate away. Now, Paolo said. He turned to Liora. Are you going to help me cook for these guests? Or are you going to run back to your wolf and tell him what he already knows? Liora looked around the kitchen, at the other chefs who were carefully not looking at her, at the gleaming equipment, at the doors that led to the dining room, where 200 people, including Antonio Ricci, were waiting for their meals. She thought about Valen waiting outside with 15 armed men, and she made a choice. I'm going to cook, Liora said. Paolo nodded. Good. Start with the risotto, Station 3. Liora walked to Station 3, picked up a wooden spoon, started stirring the pot of arborio rice. Her mind was racing. Paolo had confessed. But he was right. It didn't matter. A confession without consequences was just words. She needed more than words. She needed proof that would force the families to act. Proof they couldn't ignore. And then she remembered something. A detail from her father's journal. A note in the margin of the page about Giovanni Lanza. Sample saved. Stored in walk-in, freezer unit C, shelf 3. Her father hadn't just documented the murders. He'd kept evidence. Physical evidence. Leora's eyes flicked to the walk-in freezer at the back of the kitchen. It was massive. Industrial. The kind with multiple units. If Paolo had been working at Il Gallonero for 20 years, if he'd kept the same walk-in units. She looked at Paolo. He was busy with the duck. His back was turned. Liora set down her spoon, walked casually toward the walk-in. No one stopped her. Why would they? She was just another chef grabbing ingredients. She pulled open the heavy steel door, stepped inside. The cold hit her like a fist. She moved quickly past the hanging meat, past the shelves of vegetables, to the back corner, where 3 chest freezers were lined up. Unit C. She opened it, dug through layers of frozen stock and vacuum-sealed proteins. Her fingers were going numb. But then she felt it. A small plastic container, labeled in her father's handwriting. G.L. March 3rd, 1998. Giovanni Lanza. March 3rd, 1998. She pulled it out, shoved it into the deep pocket of her chef's coat, closed the freezer, turned around. Paolo was standing in the doorway. Looking for something? He asked. Leora's heart stopped, but she forced herself to stay calm. Porcini mushrooms, for the risotto. Porcini are in Unit A, Paolo said. Unit C is for long-term storage. Nothing in there is less than 5 years old. I must have gotten confused, Liora said. She started to walk past him. He grabbed her arm. Not hard, but firm. What's in your pocket, Liora? Nothing. Show me. Liora looked into his eyes. She saw no anger there, no fear, just a cold curiosity. like he was looking at an ingredient he was about to prepare. If I don't walk out of here, Liora said quietly, Valen Moretti will burn this restaurant to the ground with you inside it. Maybe, Paolo said, but you'll be dead before the first match strikes. The kitchen door behind them slammed open. Valen strode in. 15 men poured in behind him, all of them armed. The kitchen erupted into chaos. Chefs scattered, pans clattered to the floor. Paolo released Liora's arm and stepped back, his hands raised. I think we're done cooking for the night, Valen said. His voice was ice. He walked straight to Liora, looked her over. Are you hurt? No, Liora said. She pulled the plastic container from her pocket, held it up. But I found what we need. Valen took the container, looked at the label. His eyes widened. Is this physical evidence, Liora said, from the Lanza murder? My father saved a sample of the sauce. If we test it, we can prove it was poisoned. We can prove Paolo did it, and we can prove the Riccis ordered it. Valen looked at Paolo. You just made this very easy. Paolo shrugged. Test it. It won't matter. The statute of limitations expired years ago. You can't prosecute me for something that happened in 1998. I don't need to prosecute you, Valen said. He pulled out his phone, took a photo of the container. Then he turned to his men. Burn it. What? Liora grabbed his arm. Valen, this is evidence. It's leverage, Valen corrected. He held up his phone. I don't need the sample. I just need the photo, and the confession, and you. He looked at her. Tomorrow, you're going to stand in front of the 5 families. You're going to tell them what you found. You're going to tell them what Paolo told you, and you're going to show them this photo. They won't believe me, Liora said. They will when I have Paolo standing next to you, Valen said. He nodded to his men. 2 of them grabbed Paolo by the arms. You're coming with us. Paolo didn't resist. He just smiled. That same cold, empty smile. You're making a mistake, Moretti. The families won't turn on Ricci for this. They'll turn on you for disrupting the order. Then we'll find out tomorrow, Valen said. He took Liora's hand, led her out of the kitchen, out of the restaurant, into the cold Milan night, where the black SUVs were waiting. As they drove away, Liora looked back at Il Gallo Nero. Smoke was already rising from the kitchen windows. Valen's men worked fast. You burned the evidence, she said. I burned a kitchen, Valen corrected. The evidence is in your head, in Paolo's confession, in your father's journal. That's all we need. Liora leaned back in the seat, closed her eyes. What happens now? Now, Valen said, we call the summit, and you become the most dangerous woman in Milan. He reached over, took her hand, threaded his fingers through hers. And after that, he said quietly, if we survive, you help me build something new, a kitchen that doesn't serve poison, a table where people can eat without fear. Liora opened her eyes, looked at him, at the wolf who'd walked into her life to destroy it and ended up giving her a purpose. A kitchen, she repeated. At your villa? At our villa, Valen corrected. And for the first time in 5 days, Liora smiled. Okay, let's be real. Valen just went from, I'm going to burn your restaurant, to build a life with me in like 5 days. That man is unhinged, and we love him for it. But is Liora ready to stand in a room full of Mafia bosses and call out Antonio Ricci to his face? Because that takes a different kind of crazy. If you need to know what happens next, and I know you do, hit subscribe. Join the Honeybee family. We've got more obsessed anti-heroes, more forbidden kisses, and way more danger coming your way. Drop a comment. Team Valen or Team Run Girl Run. I'll see you in the next tale. Ciao!